everyone, my name is Annalie and this is my first ever YouTube video, so bear with me as I'm going through telling this story. It's going to be a process, but today I'm going to be sharing the story of my daughter and my pregnancy with her. I was diagnosed with insufficient cervix at 20 weeks and went through a series of complications including preterm labor, bedrest, and preterm premature rupture of membranes. That's hard to say that 5 times fast. Preterm premature rupture of membranes. Before ultimately delivering her at 29 weeks. Then we spent 57 days in the NICU and now she's home with me just snoozing on the bed while I record this. So before I had her and I was going through complications, watching people's stories on YouTube specifically gave me a lot of hope because I really had no idea what to expect. And I think any first-time mom just has a lot of fear and uncertainty, but especially moms who are going through less than ideal circumstances and trying to navigate that, it can just be a lot. So hopefully this will do what other people's stories did for me and give some of you that are watching some hope and just some faith that you can get through this difficult time. So I'll just start off at the beginning. So when we found out I was pregnant, got pregnant right away, and I kind of had this gut instinct that it was a girl. Ended up being right about that. We were super excited. The first trimester was pretty much your standard. Like, I was super sick, super tired, throwing up all the time. Spent lots of time with my head just down. I just could not even stand up a lot of days. But I also was teaching a prenatal fitness class. It was kind of funny because I would be so sick all day long, then I'd drive into the gym and walk into the class and feel so much better. So I don't know, I think there was maybe like a mental aspect with nausea, and then just like getting out there can be helpful. So our second trimester rolls around and I was so excited to get to the anatomy scan. We already knew we were having a girl. We'd found out around 10 weeks that she was a girl through doing the sneak peek blood test. And in the second trimester, I was feeling a little better, but still like kind of nauseous, just getting back into a bit of normalcy. So we had our 20-week ultrasound and everything was looking great. Baby girl was growing well, her positioning was good, everything was great, and the ultrasound tech was super fun to talk with the whole time. So then she gets to the part where they measure your cervix, and I didn't really know what this was about, but she was doing the ultrasound a little bit lower down and she was measuring how long was my cervix from beginning to end. And typically they're looking for cervix length to be 3 centimeters or longer, and mine was measuring about 2.98, but baby was head down and really compressing there, and so she was like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to the doctor about this. You're really close, you probably don't need to worry, but we're just gonna be careful. And so she came in after talking to the doctor and said, yes, we're going to send you in for a meeting with maternal fetal medicine just to follow up on this and make sure that your cervix length is okay. And I will never forget when she said the words, we need to be careful because you don't want to lose this baby. And up to that point, I hadn't really even thought that I would ever have pregnancy complications. I'm really young and healthy and never had a health complication in my life until this pregnancy. But she was like, don't be super scared, we're just being cautious. And so because it was like right there, we were kind of like, all right, well, we're just gonna go on living our lives and wait and see what happens. And then so that was Wednesday or Thursday, I don't know exactly. And then over the weekend, I remember having a little bit of extra like watery discharge. And this is just so you know, this story is going to be like TMI, just so that people understand kind of what it's like. So if that's too much for you, just be warned. And the thing about pregnancy and like pregnancy complications is everything is either normal or it's bad. And there's not really any way to know. Sometimes doctors don't even know. But anyways, so on Saturday, I was having some discharge that I felt like was more than normal. And so we called in, and because we'd had that scare with the anatomy scan earlier in the week, we called in and we still hadn't been in to see the specialist, but they had us come into L&D. They checked my, they did a little test to make sure it wasn't amniotic fluid, and it wasn't, so luckily we got to go home that day. Then the next week we went into the MFM appointment, the first one. They did another ultrasound, And they have to do transvaginal ultrasounds, so those are not fun if you've had one. If you haven't, you're very lucky. But looked like my cervix was about the same. And the doctor came in and he said, okay, I normally wouldn't be concerned about what I'm seeing here at all. There's one small thing that, because you're in for this appointment, I'm going to play the devil's advocate because there's probably nothing wrong at all, but I'm just gonna have you come back in a week and we'll recheck just to make sure everything's going good. And at the time I asked him, okay, I'm a personal trainer, is it okay for me to be exercising, doing different stuff? And he said, yes, absolutely, keep exercising. This is not an excuse to slack, which I thought was really funny. And yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. There's nothing that you could do to make this worse or better. And so just kind of continued on the next week, kind of didn't really think anything of it, but obviously we were a little bit nervous going into that next appointment, but pretty much assumed that we'd just be told, oh, we're fine, then we'll walk out and forget that this ever happened. But then the next week I had another ultrasound, and this time, instead of measuring just right around 3 centimeters, my cervix measured 1.6 centimeters. So essentially it had shortened in half in the course of the week, asymptomatically. And so when they told us that, it was obviously like really scary, because since we'd found out that I might be dealing with this short cervix diagnosis, we've done a lot of research, and I'd seen that cervical length is actually one of the biggest predictors of preterm birth, which I didn't know before. And so they told us, all right, because it's shortened, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to deliver early, but it means that you're much more likely to experience complications that could lead to an early delivery. And because of that, we're going to give you the first round of steroid injections to make sure that her lungs start developing now. And at this point, I think I was like 23 weeks and 4 days. So I was not a candidate for a cerclage at this point because I was not dilated and I still had quite a bit of cervix left. And cerclages are usually only performed up to 23 weeks because the main point of a cerclage is getting to viability, even though they can, from what I understand, be really helpful for people getting even to term if they've experienced a shortened cervix in previous pregnancies. So I got the first round of the betamethasone injection on Thursday. Did not sleep at all that night. I think it was because of the steroids, but I literally was just awake all night. Went back in on Friday, got the second injection, and then kind of thought, okay, well, now we're super scared, but also we've done what we needed to do. They said this could be nothing. Lots of times it is nothing. So let's just proceed with caution and hope for the best. So yeah, we just kept going normal. I did kind of cut back a little bit on like what I was doing as a personal trainer, but for the most part, my doctors made it really clear that that wouldn't make a difference. And so I kept doing what I was comfortable with. Then the next week, on Tuesday night, I was teaching my prenatal fitness class, same thing as usual. I kind of told my class about what was going on, but how I thought we were probably in the clear. Then went to bed, woke up in the morning on Wednesday, I think it was the 19th. Yeah, October 19th. And got in the shower and I was feeling a little bit crampy, but like super, super mild period level cramps, like, and not really like coming and going, just a little bit uncomfortable. And so I just thought, okay, I'm just going to take a drink of water and lay back down because I know if I called my doctor, that's what they would say to do. And so that was the plan. I got out of the shower and I went to pick up my underwear. Once again, this is going to be TMI, but it is what it is. And I saw that there was just a little bit of blood in my underwear. And so instantly I knew something was really wrong. I didn't know when the bleeding had started. It wasn't very much, luckily, but because it had been overnight, I just didn't even know really what to think about it. And so I threw on some clothes really quickly, ran downstairs. My husband was about to leave for work, and I just told him we have to go to the hospital right now. And so, or not work, school, because he's doing school and work at the same time along with all of this. And so we rushed to the hospital. We called ahead, let them know we were coming. They checked me in, and at first they checked to see if my water had broken, and it hadn't. Then they were trying to see if I was dilated, and 2 nurses checked me. Cervical checks are not fun. That's one thing that if I can avoid more of those in my next pregnancy, I would love that. So some nurses checked me and they said, no, you're not dilated, you're probably good, like the bleeding isn't continuing, so don't worry about it. We'll probably be able to get you home like later today. So then because of that, my husband went to school because it was just like a couple of blocks away and he needed to get to class, and my mom came to be with me. Okay, so about an hour later, one of the doctors on my OBGYN team came in and she checked me and she said, okay, I remember she put her hand on my leg and she looked me right in the eyes and said, you're dilated to a 1, so you're not going home today, but I am confident that we can get this stopped. No promises, but as long as things don't really progress, you can probably go home tomorrow. So she started to explain to me what they were going to do. And the biggest intervention that they do when you're experiencing preterm labor or any type of risk where baby's going to come early is they put you on a drug called magnesium sulfate. And if anyone has been on it, you know that it is like the worst experience ever. It makes you feel like you have the flu. So you're nauseous, you're hot. Like I felt like my eyes were like burning out of my head. You're nauseous, hot, achy. I was so weak I couldn't even like lift my head up or like my arms. And at the same time, you're like just kind of like crazy. Like some people like hallucinate. I didn't get quite that far, but I definitely felt like just kind of off in my mind. But I also I thought I was acting normal, but I'm sure if anyone who was with me would say I was not acting super normal. So then we got that started, the drip, the IV line starts going. We called my husband, he came straight back. And then we just kind of sat around and waited all day. When you're on it, you have to have your reflexes and your vitals checked like every single hour. And so I did not sleep all night long. Then the next morning after I'd been on it for like 22 hours, I literally thought I was dying. I was laying there and I started feeling like I couldn't really breathe. And I was trying to call for help from my husband, who was like sitting on the pull-out bed away from me. I was just like whispering help because all I'd done for the past 22 hours was watch the clock go in circles because I hadn't slept even more than like 5 minutes probably in a row. And I was waiting to get to the 24-hour mark because that's when they said they'd turn it off. But my nurse came in and she was like, okay, you're all right. Your oxygen saturation looks good. But let me just go talk to the doctor and see if we can get you off this early. And so she came back in because I hadn't had really any contractions or anything all night long. Then we were good. We stopped it and we went down to maternal fetal medicine again. And for some reason, I think my husband had to leave for a little bit, and so my mom was with me in the morning, and they kind of just wheeled me down like randomly. They didn't tell us, they didn't give us more than like 5 minutes notice. And so he came back from school as they were doing the ultrasound. We were talking to a third MFM doctor, and I wouldn't say she was like all doom and gloom. She was just like very realistic and not really upbeat. And she basically told us, okay, you're 24 weeks and a little bit now, so if your baby comes today, she has maybe a 50% chance of making it. And that obviously was really hard to hear. And she said the longer she stays in, the odds of her surviving go up dramatically. And I asked her, do you think that it's likely that she'll come in the next month? And she said yes. And so after that, we went back upstairs. We were super sad. My mom left, and my husband and I were just crying to each other in the hospital room because it's just the worst feeling. Like there's nothing you can do, and you know that the doctors are doing the best that they can, but sometimes things just happen. And one of my other OBs came in. I was with a team of OBs, so whoever was on that day, it was really nice at the hospital, would just come in and like talk to me for like 5-10 minutes every single day. But one came in and he was like, I've been doing this for a long time. We're really good at keeping people pregnant, and the one thing that I know is that the only thing you can control in this situation is your outlook. So the best thing that you can do is hope for the best, and you're gonna get through this. And so that was really helpful hearing that from him. And if anyone else is going through a similar situation, I have the same recommendation. Like, I know that there's so much uncertainty and there's so much fear about what you could lose, but I promise that even if the worst happens, like it's gonna hurt the most no matter what. That's what we had decided, was if she came that day and didn't make it, it was gonna hurt so bad regardless of whether or not we had hope for the future or not. And the only thing that got us through those long days before she came was having hope that things would turn out okay. So then after that, I spent the next 11 or 12 days in the hospital, got discharged on Halloween. Nothing really happened all week. At this point, I was like 26 weeks. I can't remember exactly, 25 or 26 weeks. On Halloween is when we got discharged. And then I was able to go home, and that Saturday had my baby shower, which was actually pretty fun. And I know that that's something that a lot of early baby moms who deliver early miss out on, or you have it after your baby. But that was like actually a really special, like I did it at my mom's house, and I just poured myself into working on decorations and like floral arrangements because I couldn't do anything else, because at this point I was like on bed rest. Even though I was like allowed to like get up and walk around and stuff, I just couldn't really do that much. Like one time I went to the grocery store with my mom, and I just went in the little, what are those called? Electric wheelchair shopping carts. So that was fun. So the baby shower was great. That was at 27 weeks. Then I spent another week at home, made it to 28 on Saturday, and we actually went to the gym that day for the first time in a while, because they hadn't said you can't exercise. They just were like, just be careful, listen to your body. If you start contracting more or something, then it's maybe time to like change what you're doing. And sometimes even like laying down for too long can lead to more contractions when you're experiencing preterm labor and like a lot of Braxton Hicks like I was, which is another thing that I didn't mention. Yeah, I was having a ton of Braxton Hicks all the time, so I was just tracking them on my phone, really trying to stay hydrated. I was downing that hospital water jug and then going to the bathroom like just over and over and over all day long, because I felt like that's all I could do was stay hydrated and pee. So we went to the gym. I just did like mostly stretching and like a little bit of body weight exercise. Felt good. Actually had fewer contractions during that than I'd been having all week. And realized, okay, we're at 28 weeks. Like this is a huge milestone. And that's obviously still super early. That's barely the third trimester, but it was a big deal to us when we were at risk of having her at 24 weeks. So then I had a normal day, went home, went to sleep, and then that night around 1 a.m. I felt this like gush. And at first I was kind of like, okay, that was a little bit it kind of woke me up. And it was more than I was used to coming out. I was like, that was weird, that was stressful, kind of like sat there. My husband was up reading in bed, and he was like, what's going on? And I kind of just sat there for a second, and then it kept coming. So there was just so much fluid leaking out, like my pants got soaked. I changed into some other clothes to like go to the hospital, because we're like, okay, we're getting there, like as soon as possible, this is happening, because we were absolutely sure that my water had broken. So I changed into some different pants. They were instantly drenched, and we jumped into the car. I had packed a hospital bag earlier that week just in case, which I hated doing, but I felt like made me feel just a little bit more prepared. I sat on a towel all the way to the hospital. It was like it's normally a 15-minute drive, but we probably made it there in 10 minutes because it was like 2 a.m. and my husband was just zooming along, but the towel got soaked. He brought me a wheelchair. I got out of the car, he wheeled me in and straight up to L&D, who we told we were coming, and they ran the test to confirm that I had indeed had my water break. And so I didn't know what that meant. I assumed, like, usually you hear like if your water breaks, need to deliver within 24 hours or whatever. And so I was really, really terrified. We thought it was just over. But that's not the case when you're preterm as early as I was. The plan was to wait until I was 34 weeks. And then at that point, if I hadn't had the baby yet, they were going to induce me. Another problem that we ran into though was that she was in a breech position, and she had been head down pretty much the entire pregnancy. Like from my very first ultrasound, she was like down super low, head down, and it was like hard to find her when she was so tiny, until now when she like flipped, and so that was unfortunate. But because she was breech and my water broke, and they were like, it's kind of like she's shrink wrapped in there, so it's not super likely that she's going to be able to turn back around, which means that I was not a candidate for a vaginal birth, and she was going to have to come as a C-section. Okay, so we got there, and okay, so after they told us that, then I was pretty stressed, but I was like, all right, well, let's just keep this baby in. And at that point, I was like on even stricter bed rest, where I just really wasn't doing anything. I'd take some wheelchair rides to get outside sometimes. That was about it. I'd just like sit and like watch shows, or I don't know, waste time in the hospital. So like that was mostly like boring, but that was the most important thing, is they kept saying stay boring. But throughout this time I kept like having contractions over and over, and there was actually a period of time, this would have been on the 13th, super early in the morning, that like I went in. But throughout the week I kept having contractions, and now that my water was broken, it hurt a lot more. But I made it through most of the week somewhat okay, just trying to ease through it. Then on Saturday night, or Saturday day, I started kind of feeling like super painful in my low back, and I assumed that was just because I hadn't been active, because I'm a really active person, and I was like, well, I've got this pregnancy thing going on and I've just been sitting in bed for weeks, so like that's why I'm not feeling good. But I had been like standing up, because sitting in that hospital bed for so many hours on end just was unbelievably painful. So I've been standing up and walking around and folding some laundry and stuff. And then that night, my nurse was talking to me, and I called her in because I wanted to be monitored, because I was having somewhat more regular contractions. And she was like, well, you're on bed rest and you're not supposed to be folding laundry, so let's just hope that we can keep you pregnant maybe like one more week, which was pretty inappropriate for her to say. It went against everything that I'd been told by all of the doctors, the maternal fetal medicine doctors, my OBs. They had said that exercise or laundry, whatever, wasn't going to make it worse, but I should just be careful, and I was okay doing whatever I felt comfortable doing, like if it was causing contractions or not. And so I feel like that nurse could have had a really dramatic impact on the way that I viewed myself as a mother. Like I could have felt like I was responsible for what happened afterwards. But luckily I was able to kind of come out of that and talk to my husband and a couple of other people and be like, no, that was not really an appropriate way to be treated by a medical professional. She was just inserting her opinion. And I know that this is something that a lot of moms experience, where a nurse or a doctor or someone will say something that can be really hurtful, that maybe has some truth to it, and probably doesn't come from like, I don't think that nurse was trying to hurt my feelings, like, and make me feel like a terrible mom. I think she was just wanting me to be careful, but also not really being sensitive to what I was going through. So anyways, the contractions kept coming, and at this point during the night, they got to the point where they were pretty consistent and painful, and so I got put on magnesium again right around 3 a.m. So my nurse came in, because they were monitoring me for hours and hours, and they're like, they're getting pretty consistent, let's put you on magnesium in case she comes. Hey baby. And so it was kind of interesting, because I'd been contracting for like, I don't know, 6 hours or more at that point, and then suddenly at 3 a.m. a bunch of people come into the room, they're like checking me, they're just like flipping on the lights, going crazy, and all my contractions like stopped. So that was kind of weird. And then like half an hour later, they finally got me on the magnesium. I had already stopped contracting, but they still did it anyways, just because of the way things were progressing. And then I was on magnesium for like most of the day. This was through Saturday night into Sunday morning. And then because it was the weekend, the specialist doctors aren't usually in the hospital, but there was one on call for like all of the region around us. And so around noon, I think, my OB came in, who was on that day, and said, all right, we talked to the specialist, and and the biggest thing that was going on was when they had checked me Saturday night, they could feel something protruding from my cervix into the birth canal. And so there was kind of mixed feelings about whether it was a hand or a foot, but either way, not a good thing to have happen. Baby girl was just ready to come, and she was escaping. And so in the morning or afternoon, whenever my doctor came and talked to me, after talking to the specialist, they agreed that because she had an appendage escaping, which it was her foot, but we just weren't sure at the time, and if I kept going into labor, there was more risks than benefits to stopping it again, and we probably would just have to move forward with a C-section. So that was pretty scary, and I'd hit 29 weeks on Saturday, so it was 29 and 1 on Sunday. But during the day, I had not really had contractions, so they took me off magnesium. I hung out all day long, just kind of really scared, so tired, because I hadn't slept in like a day or two. I don't even know how long. As if anyone can sleep in the hospital, because they'll come in all hours of the night and like poke you and take your blood and all these stupid things. But then later that night on Sunday, I started contracting again. And my doctor came in. It was a new doctor who was on tonight, and he checked, and he was like, yep, there's something coming out. You're dilated to about a 4. So I think it's time. We just need to move ahead with the C-section. And I'd also had a second round of betamethasone steroids as soon as my water had broken a week before. So he was like, because of that, there's really no advantage. There's nothing that we could do to like make things better in the next like day or 2. So we're just gonna do it tonight. And we don't have to do this as like a rush emergency, but because we can move quickly, we're just going to. So that is where I'll stop this video because I think it's getting super long at this point. And the whole birth story in and of itself is like a whole thing. Also, my baby's waking up. But that's kind of a cliffhanger. I'll film the rest later and share it hopefully soon. But up to this point, I just hope that this is, I don't even know, this is probably not helpful at this point. It's probably just more like scary. But I'm here now and I'm okay and my baby's okay, and I will share the rest in a little bit.